If you like this video, subscribe to my channel, but let's get right to it. Creed 2, these are my expanded thoughts. I really enjoyed the film. Not as much as I liked the original Creed, okay? Let's just say that right now. I thought the Creed captured the magic of almost the original Rocky film. You know, I like the fact that in the first film, Creed went the distance just like Rocky did, but he didn't win and all this other kind of stuff. And there was just a really good connection there for me. You know, Rocky had cancer and was suffering from cancer. I probably related to that movie a little bit more because my dad had gone through that too as well. And so it was an emotional film for me. I really enjoyed all the subplots in the first Creed with Bianca and a musician losing her hearing and all this other kind of stuff. It was just a really well done film. I thought the director for the first film, who went on to direct Black Panther, did a really great job with the first one, especially the Spielberg oneer where it went round for round and the camera never cut and it followed the action and it was completely choreographed in one of the fights. I thought that was an amazing job. I remember sitting in the theater going, oh, they haven't cut. Oh, they haven't cut yet. Oh, they haven't cut yet. I'm looking at my watch going, they haven't cut the scene yet. And they either did some amazing sleight of hand or they really just knocked that out of the park. So going into Creed 2, I already knew from the promos and everything, and I had to stop watching all the promos because I didn't want to spoil anything in the movie. But, you know, now Ivan Drago, Victor Drago's son, is now rised up in the ranks and wants to avenge his father, and because Rocky had, you know, tore him down, but yet he had killed his father. Ivan Drago had killed Adonis's father, Apollo Creed. So, you know, there was a lot of these, there's a lot going on. The whole movie had a lot going on. So there's a lot of father-son themes throughout the whole thing. You know, Rocky got Adonis to the championship in the beginning of the movie. He becomes the champion, but he had fought a guy that had been the champion for about 3 years and was fighting a lot of washed up guys. And so here comes Adonis, and Adonis takes this guy down and becomes the heavyweight champion of the world. So he has become his own man and no longer in the shadows of his father, and he is now the heavyweight champ. But, you know, a lot like Rocky 2 or Rocky 3 with Clubber Lang, you know, he had gotten the money and the fame and all this other kind of stuff, and was fighting soft fighters to get where he's at. So they felt that he wasn't challenged. So Russell Hornsby, who's in the show 7 Seconds, plays the father of the one kid who dies in that series. Love him to death. I was pleasantly surprised to see him in this movie, and he's just really cool to watch on camera. And he is like a Don King rising star promoter and says, okay, how do we, you know, he goes to Russia and he watches Ivan Drago's son, who's been training and ready to fight, and he's been killing guys over there. And he's like, okay, I got to put these two guys together and have a rematch, the avenging of the father, that kind of stuff. That's how he was trying to play it. And of course, you know, Michael B. Jordan's Adonis Creed kind of falls for that. Feels like he, you know, he keeps getting punked. People keep telling him, he's seeing news reports, you know, that, you know, he fought soft fighters to get where he's at. So now he feels like, well, I have to avenge my father. I have to do this. And so it's pretty predictable at that point, the movie. Tessa Thompson's back. She's losing her hearing even more. There was this really sweet scene where Adonis is talking to Rocky he wants to propose to Bianca, and he's got the ring, and Rocky says, you know, tell her what's in your heart and all this other kind of stuff. It's a really good scene. Then he goes in and he gets down on one knee and he spills his guts to her, but she can't hear him. She's in the bathroom, and she doesn't turn around to hear him saying all these things. And then he realizes, oh, you're losing your hearing more, you can't hear me. And it's a plays on that first movie where, you know, you got a musician losing their hearing and she's limited on time. So next thing you know, Tessa's pregnant. The character's pregnant, Bianca, and there's this hereditary, the hearing loss is a hereditary thing. So there's this fear that, oh my God, is the baby going to come out and be deaf too as well? And, you know, Rocky's talking to Adonis saying, are you ready to love this baby, even if it comes out with a disability and all this kind of stuff? And, there's a lot to get into there. And, it's a lot of these sweet stories. And then, it goes back to Rocky not being there with his son and not seeing his grandkids, once the baby's born in the movie. And I'll tell you what, it felt like there was less boxing in this movie and more story and character development as the film went on. The runtime for the movie was an hour and 130 minutes. And it felt like it dragged in areas because they were doing a lot of storytelling without the boxing and without the training montages, without all that. They still did those things, but I felt like they were really compacted and there was just a lot of storytelling going on. So again, it felt like a different kind of Rocky type genre film. Like they went a little bit above and beyond with the character stuff, which was really good. Milo Ventimiglia is back as the son. I think I butchered that name. I love him on This Is Us. I like him in everything he is. I loved him in Rocky Balboa. I thought he was great as his son, and he's back in this one. It's a beautiful moment at the end when all their stories are kind of wrapping up. Rocky finally gets the courage to go visit his son, because if you remember from Rocky Balboa, he didn't like being in the shadow of Rocky. He was trying to be his own man, and every time Rocky would come around, people would just want to get autographs from him and talk about the old fights and things like that. And he was against him fighting and going back in the ring that one last time and coming out of retirement and all that stuff. So there's still a little bit of that, even though the son moved away and Rocky has a grandkid that he hasn't seen yet. And so there's a beautiful moment at the end where his character finally comes full circle and sees his son and sees his grandson. And you know that Rocky's going to be okay, because at this point, Rocky's still visiting the graveyard and talking to the headstones of Paulie and Adrian. And so, there's a point in the film where Adonis says, other than me, you have nobody. And he's like, well, I do. I've got my son. I just haven't seen him. And so, Rocky's like all alone in Philadelphia. So he goes off at the end of the film and he reconnects, and you feel like he's whole. So he's had all this loss and risen to fame, Rocky, and had the cancer and beat that, and then the love of his son again and his grandson. And you feel like they've kind of tied up Rocky's story with a bow. And even at the end, Rocky says to Adonis, because yes, he does win the fight, he says to him, this is your time. My time was back then. And he sits down, and the shot's composed very nice, where it's the back of Rocky in his hat, and he puts his hat on, and you see his back, and he's got the jacket that says Creed on the back, and then all you see in the rack focus is everybody up on the cheering and everything up in the ring. And so that, like, okay, this is it. They've finally closed out Rocky's complete storyline. Now, getting into what's going on with Drago and Victor Drago. Well, the old Russia had fallen from back when Rocky IV came out, and so Drago went off to the Ukraine because his wife, who was played by Brigitte Nielsen in the original Rocky IV, had left the son and left Drago after he disgraced Mother Russia, and she went off to be with autocrats, rich, wealthy people, and left them to be in like rent-controlled public, housing. And so they're down in the dumps, and the only thing that Drago thinks in his head is, your mother, my wife, left us because I failed, so you can't fail. So the only way to get my wife back and to get you as our family, you've got to beat Apollo, and you have to bring honor back to Mother Russia and the Ukraine and all this other kind of stuff. So there's this whole father-son dynamic going on with Ivan and Victor. And what's crazy is, my wife, she had pointed this out to me. We went an hour into the film, hour, maybe an hour and 10 minutes before Florian, who is the actor playing Victor Drago, even said a line of dialogue. And he said nothing. First hour and 10 minutes of the movie, not one piece of dialogue, just brooding around and fighting and beating up people and nothing. And then all of a sudden, he had his one moment where it was really cool. I was kind of stoked about it. And I was wondering if she would pop up in the film, but Brigitte Nielsen did show up as the autocrat, Ludella Drago, I think that was her name, and the wife of Ivan. And so they finally, it seemed like they were getting back into good graces and all this other kind of stuff, but then Victor realized this is, she had left us, she abandoned us. How can you openly accept her again and accept everything that they're doing for us? And it was a really crazy moment. And he finally, and all of it was subtitled in Russian, which was really cool. I enjoy when they do that from a cultural standpoint. So they get into an argument, Ivan and Victor, all about loss and the mother and all this other kind of stuff. And then, of course, there's two fights in the film with Victor Drago. One where Adonis doesn't win, but he doesn't lose either. Drago gets disqualified because he hits him while he's on the ground. And so even though he beat him to a pulp and almost killed him, breaking his ribs, he was pissing blood. Adonis was just all messed up. He almost died just like his father. But then he has to overcome that, because now they're saying he has to have a rematch to defend his title, and the only match they want to see is a rematch between Victor and him. So Victor didn't win the first time, and so now this is the time. And so of course, once again, they're like, we will only fight you in Mother Russia. So they have to go to Russia to fight. And Adonis trains in the desert, like in New Mexico, and he does everything gritty instead of flashy like they did before. He's slinging sledgehammers, running behind cars, doing all this stuff to change his style, instead of being this slick puncher that he is, to being more of a brawler. And so, those kind of things happen in the film. And, overall, I enjoyed the movie. I liked seeing the father-son dynamic being played out, whether it be with Rocky, whether it be with Adonis, and he finally, goes at the end of the movie and looks at the gravestone of Apollo Creed, and he spills his guts and says, look, I'm my own man now. I've got a wife. She just had a baby. And, the baby comes up and they're holding the baby. The baby's got hearing aids in, because the baby did get the genetic disorder. So she is a disabled baby. Some don't look at that as a disability, but that's okay. I'm just throwing that out there. And so all these storylines get wrapped up. And then at the end, even when Drago's, at the end of the film, when Apollo is beating up Victor Drago and he's almost killing him, the one thing that Rocky never did was throw in the towel to save Apollo Creed in Rocky IV. Victor Drago throws in the towel to save his son. And it really just flips the script on everything. And it made for really good moments, but I can't imagine where they go from here. Ivan Drago and Victor Drago, they all became full circle. Rocky Balboa, full circle. Adonis, full circle. There's nothing else for Adonis to do to prove himself. His biggest foe was going to be Victor Drago. You can't bring in another boxer. You can't. He's already the heavyweight champ. There's nothing left for them to do as far as this Rocky storyline and Creed storyline. They demanded a second film because of the box office of the first one, but this one was wrapped up in such a tight little bow storyline-wise. There's nowhere to go. It's over. Creed's over. Rocky's over. It's finally over. I guess never say never, but there's nothing left to do. It's done. It's absolutely done. Michael B. Jordan's got so much more greater things coming his way as far as franchises and things that he's been in, that he doesn't need to even go into this well anymore. He knocked it out of the park. But again, I feel like it wasn't as good as the original Creed, because I feel like they captured lightning in a bottle there. Creed 2 has its place in the Rocky films, but to me it jumped the shark, because they could have maybe done one more film in between Creed 2 and this one should have been Creed 3, where it was a trilogy, but then that might have been just going after like a cash cow kind of thing. But I think this is it. I think they're not going to do another one after this. So those are my thoughts on the movie. It had a $50 million budget, so it only needs to make $100 million to break even. It did $60 million over the 5-day holiday weekend. The first Creed had a $35 million budget, so this is a bigger chunk of the pie that they have to come up with. But I think everybody's salaries kind of went up off that first one, and so there you go. I think it's going to be fine. I think it'll have its place in the Rocky history. I just don't think there's anywhere else to go. It was really nice to see Brigitte Nielsen in this film, coming back as that character. I didn't know she was in the movie. And all of a sudden, boom, she pops into a few scenes and you're like, oh! And because you remember Stallone married her in real life. And so like for them to be back, in the film, it's like, oh, let bygones be bygones. That's great. And then Brigitte Nielsen just had a baby at 54 years old. A baby. She had a baby. It was all over the trades. So anyway, it was nice to see her in this film. But that's all I got. Creed 2, good film. Enjoy the movie. I think it encapsulates everything that is Creed and Rocky. There's nowhere else to go. And those are my final thoughts, my expanded thoughts on this. So if you like this video, subscribe to my channel. Give me a like, comment below. What did you think about Creed 2? Do you think any of my thoughts are off? Do you think they're going to make another one? I don't know. Let me know. Subscribe to my channel. We'll see you on the next video.